Welcome to English R&L. Learn English through simple and emotional stories. Here you can practice listening, speaking, and enjoy English step by step. I Married My Neighbor is a sweet love story about Emily, a student studying. In the US, her English was weak, but her neighbor, Daniel, patiently helped her every day. From lessons, they grew close and fell in love. When Emily returned home, Daniel followed her, proposed, and she said yes. It's a story of love, courage, and learning English. Let's listen. The first time Emily set foot in the United States, she felt both excitement and fear. The tall buildings, the endless roads, the buzzing conversations all around, everything was new, everything was overwhelming. She clutched her suitcase tightly, reminding herself of the reason she had come: to study, to grow, to chase a dream she had always carried in her heart. But dreams were never easy. Although Emily had studied English for years, the reality of speaking it daily was a shock. People spoke so fast. Their words ran together. Their expressions changed too quickly. When she tried to answer, her sentences broke, her accent stood out. And sometimes she could see polite confusion in the listener's eyes. It hurt. Her small rented apartment was in a quiet neighborhood near the university. The houses were neat, each with trimmed lawns and mailboxes, standing in perfect rows. Emily's apartment was on the second floor of a brick building, and just across the hall lived a young man. She had seen him once, in the corridor, tall figure with dark hair, carrying a box of groceries. He had nodded politely, and she had quickly looked away, embarrassed at her own shyness. That night, alone in her room, Emily whispered to herself in English, "Hello, how are you?" "I'm fine, thank you." Her voice sounded uncertain, almost childlike. She sighed, pressing her forehead against her notebook filled with vocabulary lists. The next morning, she struggled with the vending machine downstairs. She wanted a bottle of water, but the instructions confused her. She pressed the wrong buttons, the coins slipped, and finally, with frustration rising, she muttered in her native language. A voice spoke behind her, calm, deep, and friendly. "Need some help?" Emily turned. It was Himtha, neighbor across the hall. "Yes, please," she answered, her accent heavy, the words slow. He smiled, not mocking, not impatient. He showed her the right button, inserted a coin, and soon the bottle of water dropped with a loud clunk. He handed it to her. "There you go," he said warmly. "I'm Daniel, by the way. I live right across from you." Emily hesitated. Then she managed, I am Emily, nice to meet you." Her cheeks burned, but Daniel's smile only widened. "Nice to meet you too, Emily." That evening, Emily returned from her first exhausting day at the university. The lectures were hard to follow, the students spoke too quickly, and she felt invisible in the cafeteria. As she reached her door, she heard Daniel's voice again. "Rough day." She turned. He was unlocking his own door, groceries in hand. She nodded, searching for the right words. "Yes, very difficult. My English, not good." Daniel paused, then leaned casually against the doorframe. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "if you want, I can help you practice. I'm a teacher, well, a part-time tutor, and I don't mind helping a neighbor." Emily blinked. She wasn't sure if she had heard him correctly. "You teach me?" she asked slowly. "Yeah," he replied with a reassuring smile. "We can start small, one step at a time." Something inside her chest warmed. No one had ever offered this before. She nodded, almost shyly. "Yes, I want. Thank you." And so it began. The next evening, Daniel knocked on her door, carrying 2 mugs of tea and a small notebook. They sat at her kitchen table, the room quiet except for the ticking clock. "Let's start simple," he said. "Everyday sentences. Things you can actually use." Emily repeated after him, word by word. He corrected her gently, never laughing, never rushing. When she struggled, he slowed down, broke the sentence into smaller pieces. "Say this. I'm happy today. I am happy today. Perfect. Now try it faster. I am happy today. That's it. See? You're better than you think." Emily smiled for the first time that day. His encouragement lit something in her. Day after day, lesson after lesson, Emily's confidence grew. They practiced in the park, at the grocery store, even while waiting for the bus. Daniel pushed her gently out of her comfort zone, making her order coffee by herself, making her ask strangers for directions. At first, her hands trembled, her voice shook. But Daniel was always there, watching with patient eyes, nodding supportively. "You did great," he would say, and slowly, she began to believe it. One rainy evening, they practiced in her apartment again. The rain tapped against the window. The room smelled of tea and warm bread. Emily stumbled over a sentence, frustrated. "No, wrong again," she muttered. "Not wrong," Daniel corrected softly. "Just not perfect yet. And that's okay." Emily looked at him. For a moment, the room felt different, quieter, closer. She realized how safe she felt around him, how his presence eased her fears. She didn't say anything. But that night, as she wrote in her journal, she admitted to herself for the first time, "Maybe I am not just learning English. Maybe I am learning something else, too." Spring arrived quietly in the small American town where Emily lived. The air was warmer now, filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the sound of birds returning after winter. For Emily, this season marked not only a change in the weather, but also a change within herself. Her English had improved slowly, steadily thanks to Daniel's guidance. What had once been terrifying conversations in the cafeteria were now manageable. She could order food, ask questions in class, and even chat briefly with classmates. Each small victory gave her confidence. But she knew it was Daniel's patience that made the difference. Almost every evening, Daniel would come by with his notebook and 2 mugs of tea. They made it a tradition. Emily's apartment became a little classroom filled with laughter, mistakes, and gentle corrections. One evening, Daniel said, "Okay, Emily, today we're going to practice telling stories. Real stories from your life." Emily's eyes widened. Stories, but too difficult. Daniel shook his head. "Not difficult. Just talk. I'll help." She hesitated, then began slowly. "When I was little girl, I play with my cousin. In the rain." "Perfect start," Daniel encouraged. "Now, instead of I play, say I played, past tense. I played with my cousin." "Exactly. Keep going." Bit by bit, the story unfolded. Emily stumbled, Daniel guided, and at the end, she laughed out loud, realizing she had spoken for nearly 3 minutes in English without giving up. "You see," Daniel said, smiling at her joy, "you're telling stories now. That's powerful." Emily looked at him with shining eyes. In that moment, she realized she wasn't just learning English, she was learning to express herself, to share her world with someone who truly listened. Their connection extended beyond grammar and vocabulary. On weekends, Daniel invited Emily to join small community events, a farmer's market, a local baseball game, or simply a walk by the lake. At first, Emily was shy, afraid of misunderstanding people. But Daniel was always by her side, translating when needed, encouraging her to speak when she hesitated. At the market, when Emily nervously tried to ask for apples, she mispronounced the word. The vendor chuckled kindly, but Emily blushed. Before she could retreat, Daniel leaned closer and whispered, "You're doing amazing. Try again, louder." She took a breath and repeated it, clearer this time. The vendor smiled and handed her the apples. Emily's face lit up with pride. Later, as they walked home, Daniel said softly, "See, you're stronger than you think." Emily's heart beat faster. His words warmed her more than the spring sun. One rainy afternoon, their lesson was interrupted by a sudden power outage. The room fell dark, except for the faint light from the window. For a moment, silence filled the space. Emily laughed nervously. "No light? No study?" Daniel chuckled. "Maybe no books, but still English. We can talk." They sat by the window, listening to the rain. Slowly, their conversation drifted away from grammar to dreams, fears, and childhood memories. Emily shared her struggles, how lonely she sometimes felt, how hard it was to be far from family. Daniel listened carefully, his eyes never leaving hers. "You're braver than you realize," he said gently. "Most people would have given up, but you keep going." Emily swallowed hard. She wanted to thank him, but words felt too small. Instead, she whispered, "You help me. Not only English, you help me, life." For a heartbeat, their eyes met and held. The air between them changed, charged with something unspoken. Neither of them moved, but both felt it, the quiet beginning of love. By summer, Emily's English had transformed. She could answer professors confidently, laugh with classmates, and even joke with neighbors. People often told her, "Wow, Emily, you sound almost like a native now." She always smiled, but deep inside, she knew who deserved the credit. Daniel. He had taught her step by step, word by word. But more than that, he had taught her courage, belief, and self-worth. Yet, along with progress, came fear. Emily knew her studies would eventually end. One day, she would have to return home. The thought of leaving this town, and Daniel tightened her chest. One evening, as they finished another lesson, Daniel noticed her silence. "You okay?" he asked softly. Emily forced a smile. "Yes, I okay," but her eyes betrayed her. Daniel wanted to ask more, but he stayed quiet. He didn't want to push her. That night, as Emily wrote in her journal, tears fell onto the page. "I am learning English. I am learning courage. I am also learning love. But, will love stay when I must go?" The final semester arrived faster than Emily expected. Summer melted into autumn, and autumn into winter. Every page of her notebook, every conversation with classmates, every confident smile in English reminded her how far she had come. But time, like always, refused to slow down. One cold December morning, Emily received the email she had been both waiting for and dreading. Her program was ending. In just a few weeks, she would be returning home. She stared at the screen for a long time, her heart heavy. The thought of leaving the United States, the place where she had grown, struggled, and found unexpected happiness, broke something inside her. But what hurt most was the thought of leaving Daniel. On her last night in town, Daniel walked her home from the bookstore cafe, where she had worked part-time. The streets were quiet, decorated with soft Christmas lights. Snowflakes fell slowly, painting the world in white. Neither of them spoke much. Their steps crunched in the snow, their breaths visible in the cold air. Finally, Emily stopped in front of her building. "I go tomorrow," she whispered. Daniel nodded, his jaw tightening. "I know." For a long moment, they just stood there, facing each other. Emily wanted to say everything. How much he meant to her. How he had changed her life. How her heart ached at the thought of goodbye. But the words stuck in her throat. Daniel finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "You've worked so hard, Emily. I'm proud of you." Tears filled her eyes. She forced a smile, whispered thank you, and turned to unlock the door. Behind her, Daniel's voice almost cracked as he said, "Goodbye, Emily." She didn't look back. She couldn't. Back in her home country, Emily was greeted warmly by her family. They were proud, overjoyed, and full of questions about her time abroad. But even as she smiled and answered, a piece of her felt missing. The streets looked familiar, the language was easy, yet her heart longed for something else, for someone else. Every night, she sat at her desk, flipping through her old notebooks, filled with English phrases. She whispered them softly to herself, remembering Daniel's voice, correcting her, encouraging her. The ache grew heavier with each memory. One evening, as she walked through a quiet park near her house, she whispered into the wind, "Daniel, I miss you." A week later, on a cool afternoon, Emily heard a knock on her family's door. She opened it, casually, then froze. There he was, Daniel, standing on her doorstep, holding a small suitcase, his eyes filled with the same warmth she remembered. For a moment, Emily couldn't breathe. "Daniel, you here?" He gave a nervous smile. "I told myself I could say goodbye. That I could let you go. But I was wrong. I couldn't stay away." Emily's hands trembled. "You came all this way?" "Yes," he said simply. Then, taking a deep breath, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. He opened it, revealing a silver ring that glimmered softly in the afternoon light. "Emily," he said, voice thick with emotion, "I don't care where we live, what language we speak, or how hard life gets. All I know is, I want to be with you. Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Emily's cheeks. She covered her mouth, her heart pounding faster than it ever had. All the loneliness, all the longing, all the fear melted away in that single moment. She nodded, her voice shaking but certain. "Yes, yes, Daniel, I will." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she threw her arms around him. The world disappeared. The noise, the distance, the months apart, everything faded, leaving only the warmth of their embrace. For the first time since she had left, Emily felt whole again. Months later, their wedding was held quietly, surrounded by family and friends. Emily walked down the aisle, her heart calm, her smile radiant. Daniel stood waiting, his eyes never leaving hers. When the vows were spoken, Emily's English flowed icily, clearly, beautifully. "I take you, Daniel," she said confidently, "to be my forever." And as they kissed, Emily realized something profound. She had come to America to learn English, but in the process, she had learned something far greater. She had learned love. Thank you for listening to this story with English R&L. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more simple and emotional English stories. See you in the next lesson.